Good morning, everyone. Welcome to, I got an echo.
It's my fault.
Yeah, okay. There, we're better. Morning, everyone. Welcome to the 9 o'clock Tuesday public meeting. If you want to rise, we'll do the flag salute. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, you want to see me? I gotta have a camera on. Okay, there I am. I would ask Commissioner Mortensen to review the minutes to give us a motion on the minutes.
Good morning. As usual, I did review the minutes of the activities last week and I move to approve those minutes.
Any questions? No corrections? See none, no hands? I would ask for approval of minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Consent agenda. We have a couple items on here today. We have a call for a public hearing to update updates to the access section of the land use ordinance. That public hearing will be held June 20th at 9:45 a.m. We have a call for bids. It's a revised county road project number 770 to paint Abernathy Creek Bridge. Funding is coming from the Federal Highway Administration Bridge Program in amount of $272,500, of which 241.5 is the construction part of that. The other part is engineering. So we'll have a bid going out for that. Agreements, contracts, bid awards. We awarded $7,800 to Sunnyside Grange. We do that once in a while to the different Granges when they have a need. We have amendment number 1 to the engineering to the Toutle water system improvement project to add surveying to the Shadow Mountain area. This is we're going outside to do that surveying because our staff right now is so tied up, it would delay that project beyond what we think is reasonable. So we're going to ask an outside party to do that work for us and get that project moving. Letters and notices. We appointed Alena. I'm going to butcher this. Pisarchuk to the Homeless Housing Task Force. 2-year term expires June of 2025. We appointed John Brugman to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. 2-year term that expires March of 2025. We received a letter from the FEMA on a proposed flood hazard change. It affects from mile 7.66 to mile 8.6 along the Lewis River. They put that out for comment. They've had no comments that came back. So that change that was proposed took effect in May. I forget the exact date, but it took effect in May. Then we have vouchers in amount of $4,422,573.71. Questions and comments on the consent agenda? See no hands. I would refer to the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve today's consent agenda as presented.
Last call for questions, comments. Seeing none, I would call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Consent agenda is approved. Motion items, we have Public Works. Bid award for pavement marking for the 2023 joint agency striping project. It's cost of a little over $1 million. I don't know if, do we have anybody here to speak to that?
Susan's on.
Susan's there. Susan, go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. Susan Eugene.
Uh-oh,
Susan, you just cut out on us.
just cut out.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Susan Eugene is county engineer. So we're asking for approval for the 2023 striping project. It's a joint agency project with ourselves, Castle Rock, Wahkiakum County, and Woodland. We received a total of 2 bidders for a total amount of low bidder for $1,057,407.25. The amount for the county's portion is $884,032 for striping 416 centerline miles and about 517 miles of fog line. So staff is recommending that we approve this project so we can get our striping done this summer to make our winter travel easier for everyone.
Susan,
Go ahead.
Susan, I was wondering if you would just share for the audience your discussion with us about the increasing costs of pavement because of new regulations.
So striping costs have greatly increased over the past few years. Some of it was due to the plastics and oils during our COVID experience. There was also a plant fire in Houston that increased our prices. And then now there is a new regulation included in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. You'll hear me refer to that as the MUTCD, that requires striping to have a certain reflectivity. So that means at night, when you're driving down the road, when your headlights hit it, it's strong enough to reflect back to you. And so that is a new regulation for our arterials and collectors and certain roadways with speed limits 35 and above, that we need to make sure every year they are being taken care of. And as part of our planning for next year's budget, we are going to be reviewing different paint types, how they hold up to plowing and the weather, to see if we need to change the type of paint we're using to help minimize the frequency that we need to do this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would add, we're not alone in that. I attend city council meetings, and Klamath is struggling with, should they paint everything, just because of the costs have risen so much. It's puts a strain on some folks, but.
Good question. Susan, on requirements here, I imagine you're beginning to see elements of self-driving vehicles and needing something to help that along.
And I'm sure that is reflected, it's not explicitly stated, but I'm sure that is reflected in the need to be on all our arterials, collectors, and roads with average daily traffic above a certain threshold, which I don't know the number off the top of my head.
I see. I would expect a change in technology at some time also. So just, it'll be exciting
Yes.
after the first 2 or 3 crashes.
Yeah.
And I think that was it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, question on striping cost. Back in the good old days, there was 3 stripes down the road, 1 on each side and 1 in the middle. Now we've got bicycle lanes, little pictures of people on bicycles, and all kinds of extra stuff that goes along with what we used to call striping. So my question is kind of what percentage of the total cost of painting is going to all of these extra lanes that we now seem to think we need?
So for the county, we currently do not have any official bike lanes. And the striping project just includes the horizontal lines that run along the road. So stop bars, the little pictures of people, are done in a different method. So they're actually done by our crews and they go out and it's a torch down method. So it's a different type of thermoplastic. So they actually heat it up to get it to stick to the pavement. So this does not include anything of that nature, except if it's similar to a fog line. We have a few wider fog lines. So instead of a normal fog line, bike lanes are delineated by a thicker, wider fog line. So that does come into play for some of the striping.
Okay, I think, as costs continue to escalate and depending on what the economy does, that's one of the things we really need to keep an eye on. Because it's one thing to put it down one time. Once you do that, then you're into maintenance every time you have to restripe. And that's additional cost. So.
Although, I wish we had a little more attention to bicycle lanes. I have no pretense on accident highways, but when there's an opportunity to put a bike lane in, it should be taken. And I think Longview tends to do that. Kalama seems to think that it's not necessary at all. And so they've recently built stuff with basically no bike lane at all when they had options. That's just Aaron speaking in frustration.
Susan, you mentioned that Wahkiakum County and Castle Rock are partners in this bid. Obviously, buying in bulk lowers the unit price. We just heard that Castle Rock was discussing the high expense. Do you reach out to all the cities every year, or you just go back to last year's partners when you go through the bidding?
We reach out every year for both this project and the overlay project to see which of the cities want to participate. So we reach out to Longview, Kelso, Castle Rock, Kalama, and Woodland, Wahkiakum, and we've actually done for the city of Willamette also in the past has participated in the striping in particular. Both of those counties will.
And they pay their share. We're not subsidizing them. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? See no hands? I would ask for the board's pleasure on this.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the bid award to specialized pavement marking as has been discussed.
Last chance for comment, questions. Okay, I would call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Appreciate it.
Oh, we did have a question.
Couple months ago, I went to the Longview Commissioners meeting. And Mayor Hash, I think it is, that's his name, right?
Their city
Hash
engineer.
is-
It's
Yeah,
Ken
Hash,
Hash,
he
yes.
says, well, we're gonna put new sidewalks in for the bicycles, and then I came up there and they said, well, we're gonna take a break now, and so I went and talked to Mr. Hash. And I told him, I said, well, I don't think we need sidewalk rails because we don't need bicycle lanes because the sidewalks are just fine. He said, well, that's all right, cause I ride on the sidewalk all the time and I don't get in trouble and I don't run into people. And just a little FYI for you all. Thanks.
Just a comment, as a bicycle, as a maniac on a bicycle or something like that, or just an aficionado, I think riding a bicycle against traffic is very dangerous. Riding a bicycle on the sidewalk is disrespectful and dangerous and not so useful. If you're using the bicycle to just bike around, then it's different. But if you're using it for transportation, you really are like a vehicle. And I wish the motorists around here understood that. I don't go through stop signs, and I agree with them. If I go through a stop sign, it's my bad. But at the same way, they just very disrespectful in many instances. Let me rephrase that. I would say 10% of the drivers just push the bicyclist way too hard. And one mistake and you're gone.
There were two examples when I was on the city council in Longview of constructing bike paths by widening sidewalks. When Ocean Beach Highway was widened through town from 2 lanes to 4, on the north side, they made it a little bit wider to accommodate bicycle traffic because the speed on the highway was higher. And then when they did the Lakes Sacagawea cleanup, and they built a pipeline to intercept all the storm drains. The pipe goes all the way down Oregon Way, and underneath the sidewalk is where that pipeline, when they changed that, they made Oregon Way sidewalk a little bit wider, exactly for the same type of thing. And then, of course, people have hedges and fences right up to the to the sidewalks, so that anybody who's on the bicycle has an extra risk when cars pull out and people walk out outside the fence. So it's been a real challenge, and I know they're going back to bikes on the roadbed with the extra lanes. So the standards change as more people express their concerns, and no, I don't think there's one best answer unless you have a separate road for the bikes, and that's not, we're not there yet at all.
Yeah, it's hard to justify the cost at some point, but as we look forward, the number of EV bicycles or electric bicycles is really growing. I know down in San Diego, some places they're zipping by all the time. And what they've done there, like on the Coast Highway, they've taken 2 lanes and said, this lane is bicycle preferred, and the left lane is for cars. And it works fairly well, but it does have an impact on traffic.
We could build them for you, Commissioner. We just have to put a toll booth. You have to pay.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because in fact, we are now at a stage in technology where toll booths are not, you did say a toll, right?
You can just click along and get charged and not even know it till you
Right.
get the bill.
But now we're facing some things like the Lewis and Clark Bridge and
gotcha.
replacements, and how do you fund that? And we could take $1 from everybody, or all right, $1,000 from everybody, or we could just charge the people to use the bridge.
Yes, it's interesting, as some of you may already know, the state has their automatic toll charging system. It's called Good to Go, which is one of those perfect government euphemisms.
Yeah, I came across the Narrows and they found me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, where are we now? Who's in Health and Human Services? Gina, this is a little different. It's not a lot of times the state sends a whole new contract. This year, they're just doing amendments, right? Am I fairly correct on that?
Yes, good morning, Gina James, Health and Human Services. This is an amendment to our current fiscal year contract for developmental disabilities. So we have 3 items on the agenda today. The first item is the amendment with the state to increase funding for this current year in the amount of a little over $165,000. The reason for this amendment is to adjust language in our contract due to legislation that passed, not this most recent session, but last year legislative session that allows for individuals with developmental disabilities receiving these services. In the past, it has always been that individuals have to choose between employment services and day services. And the legislation now allows for individuals to access both services concurrently. So there's not a choice of one or the other. They can access both services. So this was a change in this contract. So the amendment is updating some of that language to allow both instead of either or. An individual does have to participate in 9 months of employment services before they're considered eligible to access day services at the same time. The pass-through contracts that we have are, one is with Compass Career Solutions and the other is with LifeWorks. You may notice the pass-through amounts only total about $120,000 and our amendment is $165,000. The reason for that is we don't anticipate utilizing all of this funding, so we didn't allocate all of it down. What that means is we just wouldn't draw that down from the state. It doesn't mean we keep it or anything like that. And the same with the provider amounts. If they're not utilizing all of the funding, it just means it doesn't get drawn down from the state. So
Yeah, they're
that-
reimbursement type
Right.
things, right?
right. For approved services.
We also know that the amounts change as the population of eligible citizens change. So if the government identifies more people eligible, they'll offer amendments. And consequently, if the numbers go down, they'll have amendments where we get that money taken, which
Yes.
is appropriate.
Can you address or tell me what you think the underlying philosophic the underlying philosophy of what is going on here? So, for example, are we thinking of this as transitional? So I may not be able to do something, but if somebody won't give me a chance, but if I get the chance through some program, I hope to graduate out of that program and be off on my own, or is this a lifetime commitment?
These services are considered long-term supports. And so, and because individuals with developmental disabilities they're considered to have those disabilities for their lifetime. And so there are some situations, there are some cases, and we have had this happen where individuals transition out of services, and because they have built so many natural supports on their job and they may be lower acuity, so they're able to do a little bit more individually and on their own. So we have had those cases, but that's a little bit more rare, and these are considered long-term supports.
Okay, so what we did last year has a direct impact on what we should be doing this year, it seems like. And then oh yeah, what is the protection against abuse? So I'm an employer and I'm taking your money, taxpayer money, but I'm not really putting any effort to help someone perform a job. I just put them in a corner.
Well, there are lots of eyes around. So if an individual is employed, the employer supervises that employee. They would likely notice a job coach not supporting that individual and doing their role with that. My guess is the individual wouldn't be as successful in that job. We also do annual on-site visits where we review all the documentation and case notes and billing and all of those pieces to verify the background checks, all of the items that are required to be a qualified provider.
So if I'm in the program, I'm not there alone. I've got a social worker that sort of keeps me on the right track or helps me.
You have a staff that might support you. There might be times where you're out on your own, just depending on the level of support that's needed. And so there might be times where you're on your own. And then other times where the staff is checking in, or they might make sure you get to your job on time, things like that. So it's kind of a combination depending on the individual's needs.
Okay, thank you.
Is this an occupational therapy type of thing that's ongoing to make sure that somebody can do various jobs? Is it for a specific job? Like an employer is trying to get a discount, and what is this program?
It's for individuals who have been found eligible by the Developmental Disabilities Administration to have a developmental disability, it has to be determined prior to the age of 18. And at that point, then an individual can choose an employment and or a day program to participate in. The employment program, the employer doesn't receive any special benefits or discounts. It's the individual is hired just like anyone else from the general public would be hired in a job. And they receive some supports through this contract to obtain and maintain their employment.
Okay. When we're out in the workforce, we have employee files and we get evaluated as to how we perform. And if we're capable or not for promotion or demotion and more education, do these people get the same treatment?
Absolutely. Exactly. Yep. The same.
So they do have a file that follows them from job to job too, to help them through life. That's what this program is about.
They would have an HR file, just like you or I would have at a job, where their employer keeps track of their HR duties. And then they work with a service provider as well, who helps them obtain and maintain their employment in the community. And that could mean from one job to another if that's an individual works at a different location.
Gina, do the files necessarily change from employment service to employment service or support group?
Oftentimes a client stays with the same provider, but they could choose to change providers. So if an individual is staying with their same provider, then, you know, they do have a client file and all of their information is kept in there.
And again, I'm not familiar with this contract. How long has this been going on, this service?
The county has been involved in this particular contract for a number of years. I know I'm looking at Commissioner Weber.
It was going when I started 12 years ago or 10 years
Okay.
ago. So it's
I'm
been a long,
not
it's a long
familiar
time.
with it, you know, and I see a
So-
need, but I just wondered how
So,
long.
so this is part of the concepts that was developed, you know, over the years. When the movement to deinstitutionalize people with disabilities became popular and supported. The hope is these clients are living with families or they're have the ability to live independently, and yet they have some skills and that can help them lead some productive lives. So, but they have to have the assistance and the support to do that. The alternative, you know, which and kind of it replaces the institutionalization that was had all kinds of abuses that we know.
Somewhat making them productive.
Mhm. Yeah.
Adults.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question. If I'm an employer, why would I get involved and how do I get involved?
How you would get involved is by hiring an individual who might be a supported employee. Individuals who participate in this program are applying for jobs just like anyone else.
Okay.
Submitting applications and interviewing and going through that whole process, maybe demonstrating their skills. So that's how an employer gets involved, is they hire someone. And why you would stay involved is you know, the same reason you would keep any employee is they contribute to the workplace and do their job. And so, like I said, employers don't receive a special benefit or tax break or anything like that for hiring. It's the same as hiring someone from the general public.
Okay, thank you.
But let me ask I'm kind of thinking here, if it's okay with the group and my colleagues to have her explain these three, and then you would have, so you could just get them the explanations out. Are you guys good with that? Audience, you guys have any issues with that? Okay.
Yeah, so the first item 7, is Amendment 2 with the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services, specifically the Developmental Disabilities Administration. This amendment is passing down an increase of $165,875 for the services we've been discussing so that individuals can access both services at the same time.
Gina, this contract is multi-year. It's not 3.6 million in a year, is it?
This particular contract is just for the current fiscal year, and these services became effective January 1st of 2023. So the amendment is for January 1st, 23 to June of 2023. We will see a brand new contract with the state for the next fiscal year for these services. We have not seen it yet. We anticipate receiving that anytime this month.
But I think you were suggesting that I think it's correct that the sum of 3 million plus is cumulative over past years.
Let me take a look really quick.
Isn't that what you were asking? Stan?
Yeah. Most of these contracts,
When we typically this one is year by year, but through COVID, we saw a lot of amendments adding on. I do think you are correct because the contract number starts with 21, which typically means 2021. So I do think you're correct in that.
thank you. So this allows the county to get the money from the state. And then the other two contracts are for the service providers.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Correct. So items 8 and items 9 are passing through some of that amendment amount down to 2 of our providers, Compass Career Solutions and LifeWorks. We do have a couple of other providers, but they serve a low amount of clients, and we didn't anticipate them having clients that went into CI services until next year. So that's why we don't have amendments for those providers on today.
So 8 and 9 are people that do the work that we outlined in 7. Okay.
Correct.
So another question, this is more of the mechanics. So do you have to have a float? That is to say, one of the Compass Career Centers sends you a bill, you pay the bill, and then you bill the state, and the state sends you the money. So there's a period of time where you've got to put the money out if you don't yet have the money.
That's correct. And
Okay.
with this particular contract, we have to submit the billing in a state system, and it sort of gives us a pre-approval. And so we know when we pay the provider, we know what's approved by the state, and then we just have to wait for that reimbursement.
Any,
Now, did Compass Career Solutions, didn't they have their office across the?
They did. They
Annex.
were in the annex building. They recently moved down in Longview. I actually think they're pretty close to LifeWorks now, down in that same area.
And then LifeWorks is a kitty corner from the fairgrounds.
Right.
Past the parking lot.
Correct.
So over on New York Avenue.
New York. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they provide services, some therapy services, as well as the job employment support.
Yes, they provide a variety of services out of that building. Mhm.
Okay.
any comments, questions on those 3? Let me check online real quick. Okay.
Good morning, gentlemen. I would just be interested in a report sometime about the number of people that go through this. Who are we serving? You know, we don't need by name, but it would be nice to know from year to year, is this a growing thing? Some success stories along the way, or some feedback from those in the program, how they feel it's working themselves, so we can see if we're getting, you know, bang for our buck, so to speak, or to be that intermediary between the state and the county would be interesting. And I don't expect you to have that today, but
You know, it might be interesting as we look at the new contract renewal
Mhm.
to bring in some of the clients and probably the clients would, or the support folks would.
Yeah, I
be-
think that's
be
a
better
good
suited to-
idea. I happen to have the pleasure of in my working career, knowing a young gentleman, know him since he was 7 years old. And came up and did a lot of this, and I see him working at Red Leaf once in a while. He was a homecoming king at Ari Long, and he's just he's done wonderful. So yeah, I would enjoy bringing him in and doing some of that. I agree with you.
Yeah, yep, we can do that. We've had, in the past, we've brought in, one of the employers as well to kind of share that about their experience too. So yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and I am puzzled a little bit in that I know people who are developmentally disabled don't go through the program and they get a job at Walmart and they're happy employers there, and I imagine Walmart's happy. And so the question really ties into where is the value added? Are we getting $3 million worth of additional value there? Because again, the employer is paying for the employee and so forth.
Yeah. That, I'll expand on that a little bit, and that's one of the reasons we choose to run this through the county, because it gives you the opportunity to look at this and have these comments on it. If we can choose not to accept these contracts, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And
Mhm.
this gives you the opportunity to at least look at it and offer comments, and hopefully if we see something wrong, make it better. So that's one of the reasons we run this through the county, is so you have the opportunity to comment and hopefully make it a better process. Yeah.
Good morning, commissioners. I have a direct relationship, or had when I was in Cowlitz AmeriCorps and also LifeWorks, involved with the clients who did have jobs in the community. One in particular was very active and was recognized in the governor's office years ago. And he was so proud of his job that he faithfully went to and seriously took going to that job and doing his very best. And it helped him to do better with his condition that he had, this disability. And we saw that time and time again with other clients as well. So if there is a way to continue it and not have such a high budget for it, I would say it is excellent for not only our community, but these clients that are needing to have these distractions that are healthy and helpful to their livelihood, their life. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I certainly appreciate what you said. The having pride, having a responsibility makes a big difference in the quality of life.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? I didn't see any hands. I would leave it to the pleasure of the board. I don't know if you want to take them individually or you want to take them as a group. I'm fine with either.
Okay with doing it all at once?
As a group, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we do approve the 3 motion items submitted by the Health and Human Services Department as presented for developmental disability services for residents of Cowlitz County.
Last call. Questions, comments? Good. I will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Those 3 pass. Thank you, Gina. Appreciate
you.
the time. We have a I want to be aware that we have a public hearing at 9:45, but we have a few minutes, a couple minutes. I'll take a minute and expand on something we got to do this weekend. 3 commissioners were invited to the grand opening of Campus Towers, which was they're building a new unit for senior housing. So we had the opportunity to go over and do that, and I think my colleagues will agree it was a nice little it was well put on, and it was nice to hear about the history of Campus Towers. It really started out of the church and finding a place for seniors, and it's really grown and done well. My colleague, Commissioner Weber, spoke on behalf of the commissioners, did a wonderful job. Mayor Wallace spoke on behalf of Longview and did a wonderful job, and it was just nice to see. So I wanted to acknowledge that. I also wanted to acknowledge that while I got to participate in it, it needs to be acknowledged that Commissioner Jay Bush was in this seat when they approved that. So he backed that project, and I thank him for that, and just glad we had an opportunity to participate. I give my colleague Commissioner Weber a bad time because he introduced us and he introduced me, and I know what he meant. I'm the newest one on the board, but he called me the youngest, and I'm not forgetting that youngest thing. So so we have a couple minutes, but just beware in 5 minutes. We're open for public testimony. In 5 minutes, we'll shut down for the public hearing. Or if you want a small break, we can do that too.
Yeah, the short distance that I ride my bicycle on the sidewalk, the police have given me a ticket, and praise God, thank you.
You want to recess for just a couple minutes and we'll fire right back up at 9:45? Okay.
Commissioners, Tracy Jackson, Building and Planning Director. In front of you today, we'll have a public hearing. We are asking the board to consider extending the interim official controls related to the mining subsection within our chapter 1801 of the Cowlitz County Code. We've had this started in 2021. It was based on an active application that we currently had at that time. Since then, no work has been done on anything towards that application. The board at the time put in the interim controls to help our department fix the ordinance that needed updated. Since then, we've had 10 work group meetings and 3 public open houses. There's a draft code amendment with 4 surface mines. It's over in our legal department for review. The Planning Commission has done a workshop on it. We've received public comment. We're just asking the board to extend it for at the most a year. Our hope is once legal gets it done, we'll go out for SEPA. We'll take it back to the Planning Commission, and then we'll have the formal recommendation to the Board of Commissioners for adoption. Nothing in the ordinance and the documents has changed other than a different commissioner name and extending the date for 1 year. Everything else is status quo.
Okay.
So the SEPA requirements call for another public hearing, right?
Well, the SEPA comments when we receive those, we would take them back to the Planning Commission, just make sure that they didn't have a public hearing then and bring it forward to the board.
So what I was what I was really trying to ask is how many additional days will it take when we have the SEPA review? Is that a 45-day review period?
It'd be a
to get-
45-day comment period, but that is part of this whole entire plan.
Mhm.
So
So I know in the workshop you had shared with us your expectation that we're just about done, that the legal review is not complete yet. So we need to extend it because the date has come up.
That's correct. And I don't want to miss the interim controls to keep them in place as they are today.
And there's no particular controversy left. I mean, everything's been
There's
pretty well
nothing.
talked out and.
The active application has not come to play.
So is there an active application?
It's not, it's been,
It's elapsed.
Withdrawn?
it's been expired, and there's been no additional talk on that application coming forward again.
So throughout the county, there isn't anything pending.
Okay. Open up.
So you actually have to formally open a public hearing with the knack of the gavel.
I thought I did at the beginning, but we're opening a public hearing for comment if we have some. I think it's pretty straightforward. You feeling better? Looks like you are.
Well, I'm not sure I understand this 100%, but this has been going on since 2021
That's correct.
and you want another year. What's holding this up that it's going to be 3 or 4 years old before you get to some type of decision?
We're hoping to have it done before the end of this year. That's our hope. Giving us a year just extends it for the year. It's kind of a clean break. The three of us, myself, my planning manager and my senior planner, are all new to the department. As well as our prosecuting attorney's office, the ones reviewing this they're short on staff. So kind of a catch-all. I mean, no excuses. We're working towards it. And so we're just trying to extend the date so we don't let anything pass and we don't get let anything lapse and continue working forward this process.
So if I understand it, a minute ago, you said there's no active applications. Basically, this is just a policy thing you're trying to establish?
We're looking to update our county code.
Pardon me?
We're looking to update our county code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It says here, surface mining extension. What is meant by surface mining?
Do you mind?
Wayne Nelson, planning manager. So by surface mining, it's the general term in the sense of excavation of raw materials for export.
Okay, thank you.
Like maybe a rock pit.
Exactly right.
Those type of things.
It's not underground.
Yeah,
So open pit, basically.
yeah,
Exactly right.
yeah. Any other
And
questions?
typically in Cowlitz County, the minerals are sands and gravels. I
Yeah,
don't know of any
I-
coal mines locally or.
I think you're right. I think,
Despite the fact that we have Coal Creek, I think there was a mine up there that they were looking at.
Centralia
at one
had
time.
the coal mine for years and years. It was open pit, but. Any other questions?
So I did actually, you might be able to answer this, Tracy. The county does have piles of sediment left over from the eruption of Mount St. Helens at Cooks Ferry Park. And periodically it is mined and sold. Does that come under this surface mine ordinance? Or do we know? Doesn't happen very often, but I know every once in a while we'll get
No,
it.
it doesn't happen
request.
very often and it would be grandfathered into whatever it was approved prior to.
Okay,
I don't think that they get rock out of there, but I don't think they don't use explosives or anything like
Right,
that.
correct. Yeah,
they
it's just all
They just scoop
sitting on
the,
top.
correct.
Yeah. Okay,
It's more
I
like
was just curious.
ash.
Okay. We'll just close this.
There we go. Sorry.
Close public hearing and then so we can leave the pleasure of the board what they want to do on this.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the surface mining extension for the interim official controls.
See nobody approaching, no hands. I'd ask for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Thank you.
I think that has been the easiest hearing I've ever been in.
I'm just going to give you a quick update on things we have coming up this afternoon at 1:30. We have juvenile court in. Tomorrow at 1:30, we have Larry Wood. Mr. Wood's going to come in and talk about a micro home community concept he's had. We have on the mental health tax. We're expecting the sheriff's office and the prosecutor's office. So that's tomorrow at 1:30. Today at 1:30, we have juvenile courts. With that, we're open for public comment.
I'd like to thank the Public Works Department for fixing the shoulder of Monticello Drive. It was really getting to the point of being going to be a serious washout the next time we had a down pour. So I'd have to say thank you for addressing that issue.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I do that too.
I know, I forgot, and it was so important. Citizens Patrol, I really thank Justin Taylor for being the lead on that program. Other people had dropped the ball and he didn't show up, and he was able to fulfill the obligation, the criteria for that particular evening class. You really have a stellar sheriff deputy. He's awesome.
Yeah.
On the whole program, I learned a lot. I have a lot of respect for the coroners. I wouldn't have gone into the coroner and asked her about her job.
Mhm.
That program put us in outside of our comfort zones, and it educated us to what each department goes through and the laws that are keeping their hands tied. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And thank you for encouraging to have that program. I would encourage other citizens to partake in it.
Did you take the taser?
Oh, no, mama, don't do that.
You didn't do it?
No, those poor kids that did, they hurt for 3 days.
Just curious about something. Does the county, as far as the commissioner's concerned, have anything to do with the funding of the courts? Courts are funded through this body.
For the most part, there are some nuances there.
The state provides some assistance on certain programs, but there's.
And judges, half the pay comes from the state and the other half comes from the county.
And all their benefits.
Yeah. The nuance I would add to that, and Commissioner Morton has spoke to it before, a county has tried to exert control over their judicial system by not funding them, and they were taken to court and lost. So we do fund, but it's pretty adamant that we do fund. You get what I mean, we have the charge to fund that system. If we try to withhold, though, the courts have said you're not going to be successful.
So interestingly, the judges' salaries are set by a state commission. We don't have any say on what the salary is. We just have to
Yeah.
provide the funds for our share of it. At the district court level, they also serve as the municipal court judges. So there's a cost share with the cities that utilize the district courts, but
So are the courthouses and Hall of Justice and so on, that's all handled through
it's all Cowlitz
through
County.
this?
Yeah.
And then the actual functioning of the courts is handled between you and the state or the county and the state.
The funding is. The laws are. Some of our codes go before the judges where that's appropriate, but they mostly deal with state law infractions.
So how does one determine, where the cost is on that? If you're required to fund a portion of it and the state funds part of it, how does the public know whether that's in the proper realm?
We publish a budget every year that we adopt. Towards the end of the year, we adopt the budget that outlines where the revenues come from and the various categories of expenditures. So there is a document that you can get a hold of on request. That lays it all out. I mean, it's all.
Does it include what the state funds?
I believe those. I haven't looked it up, so I can't tell you 100% how it's all categorized, but we can find that number. It's not, it's complicated, but it's not hidden. You
Yeah.
understand what I mean?
Yeah.
In effect, we know a priori that we have 5 Superior Court judges. We know their salaries. We know half come from the state. We don't worry about that half. We worry about our half, and that goes into the budget. And essentially, it's like all other departments. They tell us what they need to operate. And then we sort of review that for compliance, fidelity to hopefully operating process that we have, like the constitutions and so forth. There's a ridiculous example that I can give that helps you understand a little bit of why we have it like that. Let us say that the board did not like an elected official, like they didn't like the auditor. So we decided that we're not going to fund the auditor. Clearly, that would be the board trying to take over the function of an independently elected individual, elected by you. And that would not be a good system. And so somewhere between that and us just rubber stamping everything is the line we try to achieve at the budget time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the area that we might have the most discretion over is with HR policies, that is wage rates and, benefits and benefit levels and those things. So that's kind of on us. And the numbers of employees that they have. But again, with the judicial branch, we have a much less latitude in cutting personnel. We try and they push back pretty hard.
Right, and like in the public works department, we could in theory be very tyrannical and decide we're not going to do anything in some part of the county. And we do have that option, and it probably would be you, the people, that would have to come and pound us on the head in order to straighten that out. But we don't have that option with other electeds. That would go to the courts immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is, they tell us how they want to operate. We don't tell the Superior Court people, you will have 3 sessions a week for drug court. You'll have 2 sessions for that. They tell us.
Yeah.
So there are 2 additional services that the Superior Court operates. One is the Youth Services Center, usually known as Juvenile Detention Center. And so that's under their leadership and organization. And the other service is drug court. And so those aren't there's a little more discretion on funding those areas, but, because those aren't essential judicial functions, but, so those are some additional areas that we deal with. We're having the workshop with the Juvenile Services Center, just this afternoon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, to review the programs. The state says that if a county has over 50,000 people, they must operate a juvenile detention center 24/7. Well, we regularly have, what we do, we have that service going 24/7, fully staffed. And we run about a dozen kids. And there's a lot of money that's being spent that we'd just as soon spend on other services if we need to. But that law is in the way. So one of the issues we're looking at is what's a better model for serving the needs of the juveniles who have run afoul of the law. And it's a frustration on our part because there's a state law that requires the expenditure of a lot of funds.
And,
Working on it.
you know, I would reiterate what I said a little earlier. If it is something that we don't have a whole lot of control over, I still think it's important that if we can run them through the county, that it gives you the opportunity to look at them and comment on it. And hopefully through comments, make it a better system. So, David, even if, you know, there's something that I can't control, I always want the public to have the opportunity to weigh in on it and hopefully make that a better system.
Well, I appreciate that much. That helps me to understand.
Good morning, fellas.
Morning.
The last time I was back here, we talked about the sheriff's department a little bit, and you guys referred me to.
Make sure you come close enough to the microphone.
You guys referred me to Victoria Blasel and Human Resources Director and Deputy Director. Well, we went and seen them. My question to you fellas is, what was the reason why we would have seen those folks? And what was your intention sending us their way?
I'm trying to remember. Usually if there are circumstances where citizen has concern about the performance of a county employee, we would direct them to HR to start a process. And if there were any damages involved or something at risk for a lawsuit, we would direct them to the risk individual. And I'm sure it was in that view we did that.
Yeah, because when we first showed up, I spoke with the director there. I said, well, are we going to record this? And she was like shocked and said, oh, no, I'm not going to be recorded. And it was me and Joanna Barnhart and Barbara Reeves that were in that meeting. But it seemed to me like they were just there to get information to use against us and not actually in any way represent us.
Could you be more specific? There were some pronouns there. I wasn't sure.
Well, let's put it this way. We were probably in that meeting for
That meeting, which meeting is this?
where we met with them in the hearing room over here.
Who is
Jason.
them?
Director of Human Resources, the
Okay.
Deputy Director of Human Resources, and Victoria Blasel, the Risk Management Officer. Or her position anyway. And they probably said a total of 10 words to us in an hour and a half. And we'd ask them about something and they wouldn't comment. And so, yeah, other than that didn't seem to. And then I did get a call from Victoria Blasel probably 2 weeks after the fact and said she had forwarded that to Brad Thurman. Now, I don't know what the protocol is or what we should expect from this. And I know Mr. Weber wasn't here during that time frame, so he may not be informed. we still have complaints to file against the sheriff's department. And we were just waiting to see if Brad Thurman's gonna step up to the post and even talk to us. Or I don't know what comes after the risk management meeting we had. So that would be something, it would be nice to know about, cause I have no idea. And then on the second topic, this Paradise Cove RV Park, which is actually in relationship to this county issue with the sheriff's department. We made some complaints in the last 2 weeks with environmental services and also the building department here. And Daniel and Andrea came out from ES, I think, and Daniel came out from the building department, and there was another young lady to inspect that park. Now, from when I spoke to Daniel a couple weeks ago, he mentioned to me, if you don't file a complaint, Mr. Johnson, we won't be coming out till November, which I think is an annual permit issuance every year for these kind of developments. And in my complaint, I said that these RVs were 13 inches apart. And they're way too close together for fire safety. And according to the chapter of RV parks and campgrounds, it says you have to be 10 foot apart. And if this park is inspected annually by the building department, and it's good to see that the director is here from building and planning, what has been going on for the past Novembers? I mean, do we have to file a complaint to get resolved? Or do the people that come out in November, there's a reason why they issue this new permit, I guess, and it would be an operating permit. They must do some type of an inspection and look at wrong, issues that are not in compliance. So to add to this manager that we've had, that's a real problem. He developed 9 other campsites in that park without submitting any kind of plans to the building department whatsoever. He came down to the building department because Daniel said he spoke to him. But he just got the paperwork on the camping and RV park and just went back there and did what he wanted to do. Now, this guy's been defiant because he's already got 12 state's attorney complaints against him, or maybe 14 now. So my question is, what is the building department going to do with the rigs that are this close together? I talked to the deputy fire marshal, Noons, and he was going to forward this up to the chain of command. Do we enforce the codes or do we not enforce the codes? Because it just seems to me every November, if this has been going on, this has been present for some time. And then if I complain about 2 things and you come out and you walk the property and you see numerous things, are you going to enforce those codes or are you just going to let those slide because they didn't have a complaint against it? That's my question. And I just want to bring it to your attention because you guys are here for us, from what I understand.
Well, that's the first time. I'll certainly, I think we'll look into that. That's the first I've heard about them being whatever apart and stuff. I haven't heard that before, but we will look into it.
I mean, granted, we got good response.
How does he
from it.
still have any people that live there?
How many people that live there?
I'm wondering, how does he still have people that live there?
Well,
I mean, it sounds like a guy.
a lot of the folks don't have the money to go anywhere else.
Oh.
Okay, I mean, they're on small incomes from Social Security and they're elderly. And and we've mentioned this to the ownership, but all they care about is making money. But when you see, and this is another thing, and what I've witnessed over the past years here, when you get them on top of each other like that, and I'm serious, 13 inches apart, 3 foot apart, 6 foot apart. Well, the code reads 10 foot. Let's do something about it. Let's solve it. They had a new septic design installed in February. Well, they're driving 20,000 pound rigs over the leach lines. It's a no-no. according to what I heard from the building department. So do we enforce these? Do we enforce this? And I don't know who has the most power in regards to the relationship of proximity, these units, but what it also does is creates a bigger police response out there because you have these people on top of each other. And not everybody lives the way other people live. So you get a police response, you get negative, you just get more problems. And what I mentioned to you, I sent a letter to Travis, I think his name is Gephardt, in regards to the 9 campsites they developed. That park was not engineered for any more people whatsoever. It was built back in the 50s. That park was engineered for camp trailers that had no pop outs and were small. If there's setbacks and distances between boundaries, they don't have that there, and they're up against timber. And if one of those rigs burn up, all of them are going up. And Nunes came out there. And I furthermore said to him, I said, there's not even a fire extinguisher in this park. So if people are, I don't understand why some of this, without even a complaint, has not been addressed.
Give me the name of the park again.
Paradise Cove RV Park, 112 Burma Road, Castle Rock, Washington, 98611. And I would have asked you folks to come out and just take a walk and see what you think. But I can tell you right now, if one of those rigs goes up, and about 40% of the rigs in there of a 50-unit park are in violation of distance. And it can create a real problem. It can create a deadly problem.
Yeah.
And so that's, the only reason why I came down here is because, dealing with some of this stuff this last few months, if you don't put people on notice, you don't get anywhere. And Daniel, when he came out there, I spoke with him just a little bit, and I don't have anything against any of those folks, Andrea or Daniel. But he said I made 2 complaints, and I think one was the septic and one was the closeness of the rigs to each other in proximity. Well, if you're only going to come out there and look at those 2 items and you're not going to see everything else, then, so I followed it up with another letter, because I think somebody from the building department and or from the fire marshal needs to go out there. They have building codes in every building in downtown Longview. They come out, fire marshal comes out and does his yearly inspection. I worked in the city of Seattle. I've seen them do it all the time. So, I mean, why wouldn't they do it at this park? Especially when we're getting complaints. And I know Joanna's filed one, and I think Keita's filed one.
Who do the complaints go to?
Environmental Services and the building department.
Downstairs.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So, and like I said, they did respond. I sent them a notice on Thursday of one week, and they were out on Monday or Tuesday of the next. But now, what are they gonna follow up with?
We'll follow up with them and do that. I want to be clear, if you really got rigs that are not the same far apart and they've done some illegal stuff, and we enforce all that stuff, you're going to reduce the capacity of that park, and people are going
Absolutely.
to lose their homes.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
just
but
know
is it
that.
better to be dead, or is it better to be,
To me, that
it's pretty,
you people make your choices on your own. If you're comfortable there, you're comfortable with there.
yeah,
But if you want us to enforce the codes, and we'll go look at that.
absolutely.
If I may, when you first presented this back, it's a couple of months ago now, at least.
Yeah, but I pretty much only presented the sheriff's department issue with this. Nothing about what we're talking about in this case.
Right, but when you did come to us the first time, it was an issue regarding kind of the rampant drug trade and your fear for your safety in the park from human aggression, if you will.
Well, it was the managers, actually.
Yeah,
because-
and that is has that been resolved?
No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
So there are some issues I would want to ask here, but I'm not sure this is a good place to go into specific details, but the process in your questions, there's some just general process questions that I think if it's all right with the chairman and with Tracy Jackson, maybe she can just say how things should work in general.
That'd be wonderful. That would absolutely be wonderful. Be nice to know.
Good morning again. It is an annual inspection that our office accompanies our environmental health units. They're the ones that issue the annual permit every year. We go out there and look for different setback, make sure everything's in compliance. I was notified this last week. Our fire marshal building official is meeting with our fire district, as well as we're presenting to our legal team to see options. Commissioners, you know that if we enforce the codes, we're displacing people. So we haven't come to that. We haven't brought it to the board yet because we're still trying to figure out what's best for the neighborhood and for the people of the park. We have some infractions that I know that our environmental health unit is working towards and working on, as well as I know our building officials working with the fire district for the fire. The closeness of we know there's issues on that site, but it's going to be a checks and balances thing between displacing people and enforcing codes. So we're trying to do legally what we can within the constraints of what we're dealt with right now.
Tracy, several years ago, when we were discussing with previous building and planning directors, one of the issues that came up was conflicting codes because of the changing nature of the use of RVs. People usually did not live full-time in RVs. And so those
Correct.
standards for RV parks were much looser because it was all very temporary. Now we're seeing, and so that was one kind of code. And then permanent residents had much stricter codes, but there were some conflicts. And did we ever get those straightened out? I know we
There-
reviewed something a few months ago.
You have reviewed it. It's coming forward. We're trying to organize with the Board of Health. The Board of Health has to adopt one of the ordinances and the
Yeah.
Board of Commissioners has to adopt the secondary ordinance. So both of those ordinances and codes mingle well together. It's
And-
being
and I
cleaned
think-
up. It's within the next month.
And in the process of reviewing these conflicting codes, we had COVID, which kind of just shuts everything down.
Correct.
It's been a hard time to get up
Correct.
to updating, but we're on the
But
path of
those-
getting that straightened out.
But
we-
those annual inspections are done, they're done yearly and we usually accommodate their staff just so we can get on site too and look and see, make sure everything's up to code.
So
That's
you thoroughly go through on the annual inspection and
we
and-
have planning staff that usually goes with the environmental health unit from the health department. There's usually at least two out there on site and they do that annually. They went out there early because they had received a complaint. And so they had went out earlier I must have been this last month. And that's where you met Daniel and Andrea and Jenny.
Janet.
And so they've brought it to light and we're trying to work with our legal department, fire department, and then I'll be asking the board what they wish to do.
Yeah, because I would imagine in regards to fire safety, there isn't much to talk about.
That's correct.
Okay, other things I can see leniency. And I know this is gonna change my deal too. I know that it's gonna affect us all, but what's
Well,
right?
the other one would be broken septic systems. They have to be
Yeah,
fixed. So
And
those
Daniel
two,
mentioned to me, he said, that's a no-no. You're not supposed to be driving across them. But this manager that is, the park manager is doing it. So, and that septic, I think, was $140,000.
If I could, some of the details are always going to be, we really need a holistic picture of it, but in terms of process, there is, let's say your group found that someone was in violation of something you would wish to pursue.
Mhm.
Could you run through what the steps might be, what some contrived scenarios might look like?
In most scenarios, we receive the complaint. We go out and do at least a site visit or a couple if that's what happens. And we work with the homeowner or the property owner to come into compliance if we saw deficiencies. With this particular park, we've got some resistance from the park owner or the park, whoever was on site that's running the place. So we've been told to deal with their legal department as well. So we're running up to some obstacles with that. But in any other way, we try to get them in the department to try to work through whatever deficiencies and to work with that property owner to become compliant.
Right, in all that, there's a lot, so you send them a letter, an official letter,
Yes.
so it's documented. They tell you to go take a long walk off of a short bridge. What's your next step?
We usually try to follow up again with them, see if we can get any kind of, a lot of times we will bring in a different staff member too, sometimes personality conflicts, whatever. We still try to reach out and work with the homeowner as much as possible. And then when we can, if the code allows, we could issue infractions, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the compliance.
Okay, and if that continues to fail, we've lost already, what, you send a letter, it's been
Couple months. It
well,
usually takes.
two months
Yeah,
past, and now you're finding you're gonna have to take legal action?
we could. And then we
Okay.
would work with our prosecuting attorney's office.
In the meantime, the conditions haven't changed any. of it.
Correct.
What about where they were defiant and developed these sites without your guys' approval and site planning and topographical pictures of the site planning and,
And that's something we can look at, but our first concern is the fire life safety hazard.
well, that's good.
That's
Okay.
my first concern.
And I know the sheriff's department has trouble with complaints that my neighbor's dogs are barking incessantly. The sheriff goes out there and the dogs are quiet.
Right.
And they go again and again, and the same thing. There are some, like when you drive, in this case, I didn't want to get into details, but a 20,000-pound truck over the drain field, that would seem like you'd have to catch them doing it, right?
Correct.
Or get photos, I guess.
Well, you
That's
almost-
different.
I mean, you can take a recording of the
Well,
dogs
this is a
barking.
good thing about that, Arnie, excuse me, but the way this park is engineered in those areas where that drain field's at, there's no way ands, ifs, or buts about it. It tells you exactly that they're driving over the drain field because you got one RV facing this way, the gooseneck, and you got one RV facing this way. Because the servicing unit to power those rigs is only on one in the middle of two units. And as you know, these rigs have their cords on the driver's side of all of them to plug into power. They should have separate boxes for these rigs in that park, but they have separate boxes, but they're in the same location.
Yeah,
So
no,
you have a rig.
let me stop you. Yeah,
Yeah.
those details are unimportant in this conversation because the point is we cannot typically infer, oh, they must have been driving over it. We actually have to have a witness that
Well,
is
there's no other way to
authorized, if you
exit.
will.
There's no other way to exit but exit over the drain field. There's no other way.
And that would
When
be
you
our
have a
environmental
45
health
foot
unit.
rig.
That would be our environmental health unit.
Yeah.
From our health department. And Andrea was one of those ones out on the staff that was out on site. So we have some calls in with Doug right now
Yeah.
over there
Okay.
regarding this park.
I'm going to offer some comments on this, and it's not going to be popular with everyone, and I'm not really speaking to this particular issue. It may be warranted here, but what I struggle with, the government you ask for to fix your problem is the government you're going to live with forever. Problems are best fixed by the people that live in these places and put pressure on the others to do it. If you ask us to do it, then we're going to get into every nook and cranny of your life. And you've seen it happen over the years. So I struggle with in this situation, yeah, maybe we need to step in here, but by no means am I saying that's authority to step in. There may be some people that I want to live here. I don't care if they're 3 feet apart. I'm really big on individual choice. If you want to live that way, I'm going to try and stay out of your life. You're a grown up. You have the ability to make decisions and do what's best for you. If you're asking me to make those decisions for you, then watch out, because we're going to make every dang decision that comes along. And so I just caution you that, and I'm telling you where I come from. And I know, and I'm not saying that this one isn't warranted. I'm just saying, be careful here.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, but that's like telling somebody, you can run a red light and I'll stay, and the other one will go on go. The rules and the color of law are developed for this.
There's
type of deal.
society norms that you should stand by. But in red light and stuff, that's nonsense. That's apples and oranges, what we're talking about. I'm talking about your individual rights to make decisions that's best for yourself versus asking the government to make those decisions for you. And that's where I'm coming from. I understand societal laws. You don't go out and you don't murder people. You don't go out and rob people. You don't go out and do those things. Those are biblical no-nos, and you live right. But be careful about asking us to get into your daily lives and get into your decision-making and solve all your problems, because government does a terrible job at it.
Well, I'm not gonna say that that's correct, but the question, like some of the ladies said, they would like to ask the commissioners to maybe walk that park and see what they think. But that's your call.
I have no problem doing it.
I tell you what, I think our department is working on it. Sounds like they're investigating. It does take a long time to get through all of these things, and it is frustrating. Perhaps Tracy, you can just regularly touch base with us on the progress and the process. If we need to touch base with our lawyers and do what we can, let's do that. But you meet with us weekly, so why don't we put that on our list just to kind of update?
Of course, I'll
what
give
we
you an
have.
update every week of where we're at with it and what we've accomplished.
And Tracy, my question to you is, did Noons get a hold of you with Deputy Fire Marshal, one of the fire people at all?
The fire marshal is
Yeah.
based out of our office. It's our building
Oh,
official.
yeah.
So, I don't know what his title is there, but Dustin Nunez is,
Okay.
He's the fire chief.
He's like one of our staff members. He works hand in hand with our fire marshal and, in our office. So,
Because he
yes.
was out there. I know
Yep,
that.
we're
Okay.
well aware. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me piggyback a little bit on what the chairman said. Many years ago, well before I was in office, there was a meeting with the commissioner and a citizen and building and planning, and the citizen was desirous of building a granny flat. And the rules were such that if he built the granny flat, he'd have to sprinklerize it because he exceeded the number of square feet. And this is long before your time there. Yeah. And it ended up that because we were following fire rules, standard fire rules, the gentleman wasn't granted the variance. He wasn't able to build a granny flat. And that's the kind of thing you're concerned about is we hamstrung a lot of you based on trying to solve one particular issue. We cannot solve everything. Rent control, slumlord laws and all that start adding up, and eventually you exacerbate the problem. Nothing to do with here in particular. And so I'm trying to keep an arm's length away from this so staff can do its job, but just be careful of what it is you ask for.
Good morning. My name is Barb and I also live at Paradise Cove. We are asking for your intervention because we have done everything we can do. And we are up against brick walls. There are people there whose lives are in danger because of the closeness. Kita has a trailer right behind her, 3 feet, shoots flames out of its hot water tank area. That could catch her on fire. This park wasn't always so congested and crowded. The new manager has stuffed huge trailers in very small spaces. That was not always the case. So we are asking for your intervention. We have filed numerous complaints throughout the park with the Attorney General. I know that other tenants have stated that they've gone to the health department and so forth, because of the raw sewage that comes up in the shower drains. No inspections, no, what these tenants have said, and it is hearsay, is that the buck is passed. Oh, that's not our department, or they don't have to provide you with showers. So it's just ignored. I've lived there 5 years. I had a good job. I managed nursing homes for most of my career. I retired the first time and went to work running a 330 unit low-income apartment complex. I saw a fire there, which gave me horrible PTSD, level 4 of 5 levels of PTSD from that fire, and watching 30 people lose their home and some lives and everything they owned. If people have to relocate, there are remedies for that as well. The owners can pay relocation fees. There are funds available through the state for relocation. It can be done and it should be done because lives truly are at stake. It isn't a joke. You're our last line of defense. If you call any of the numbers for legal aid or CLEAR or any of those agencies that are supposed to help low-income people with legal problems, you get nothing. We can't help you. We're too busy. You get a voicemail. You never get callback. There is no real help, none. That's why we're coming to you, because we need help. We have been unjustly treated by the sheriff's department. And there are complaints and there is evidence and supporting documentation. There are numerous problems there. Everything from infestation of moles where you injure yourself. I was sitting in a chair, the leg went down a hole, it injured my knee. I had to go get medical attention and injections in my knees. There have been 2 fires there since I've lived there. Trailer burnt completely up, and it was far enough from the other trailer, but it still caught the other trailer on fire, caught trees on fire. It's a disaster out there. And I really do invite you and urge you to go see for yourself. The people that live there are simply poor. They had good jobs. They were regular people just like you. There are retired veterans living on less than $1,000 a month out there. This new manager has moved in some of the people with as many as 4 huge dogs, and they don't pick up the waste. Dog feces is a rat's #1 source of food. There's dog shit everywhere there. Excuse me, I didn't mean to say that word. It's terrible. We need intervention. We need the codes to be reinforced. And if somebody comes and actually looks at that park every November, they must be blind. Thank you so much for listening to me. And I appreciate what you can do. And it does need to be done, Mr. Dahl. The government does need to come in.
I
and
told
do
you, I
its
wasn't
job.
talking about this particular project. This may be well.
Well, I
known.
am.
I'm talking about
I
in
am
general.
talking about this particular thing.
Yeah.
We
it
do
is.
need government intervention.
Well,
Because we're just citizens, we're poor citizens. We're people that are afraid to lose our homes. We're fearful of this person that's running this place. They're not good people. They're not good people in the slightest bit.
Thank you.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Comment to the citizens of Paradise Cove. You're very lucky that this is a county problem and not a city problem where you'd be cut off after 3 minutes. And that would be the end of the discussion. So this is a working session. And, I haven't been there and I don't know everything, but I think you've heard enough to know that this is pretty serious. And Tracy, I'm glad to hear that you're on the thing, but it's time to step the game up. If all of these allegations are true, you already know you're dealing with some people that aren't going to follow any rules. So it's time to take the kids' gloves off and go help these people out.
Your primary job is policy and budget and personnel. You've got liability issues here. You need to address them.
Gentlemen, Commissioner Dahl, I really want to tell you, I agree with the idea of less government and let people fix the problems. However, in this case, government's already got their nose in it. They've already got standards. They've already got rules and regulations and policies. And if you're not enforcing them, then why do you have them? Either get the hell rid of them or enforce them. And those policies were put in probably for safety reasons in fire standards. And what you gonna pick and choose for the building department? Somebody comes in here and tries to follow the rules to build a house or put in a driveway. And then they say, screw the county. I don't agree with what you guys gave me a permit for. I'm gonna put the driveway in where I damn well please. Are you gonna turn a blind eye to that? You get to pick and choose which policies and which rules and regulations that you're gonna ignore or you're gonna enforce. I appreciate the compassion of you don't want to displace people. I absolutely agree with the hardship of that. But that's got nothing to do with the fire safety problem that it sounds like we have in this case, that protecting people's lives is a hell of a lot more important than saying, oh, I'm sorry, we don't want to have to make you move and risk having a bunch of people get killed in the middle of the night from a fire. But I guess my big problem here is if you got rules and regulations, and I'm sure they're there before you guys, maybe any of you guys were even on this board. But if you have those rules and regulations and they're there for a reason, why turn a blind eye to them now? I guess if somebody's been inspecting this place every November, why the hell has a blind eye been getting turned to it every damn year? This just stuns me that we're gonna, on the compassionate side, say, we don't want to displace people, but we don't want to enforce our rules because we might hurt somebody's feelings.
I don't think I said I wouldn't enforce the rules because I want to hurt somebody's feeling. I just wanted to make it known that that could happen.
Absolutely.
And this is the first I've heard about this part.
I understand that.
First time.
So the way we want to change the rules is we'll let somebody violate the rules year after year and all of a sudden, well, let's change the rules because we don't want that person to have to do something, follow the old rules. We'll change it.
I don't think anybody said that up here.
Well, no, I'm asking that question. I'm not accusing you of saying that. I'm just saying that if we got to revisit rules and regulations, why does it have to happen after somebody's breaking the rules? Typically, normally, if somebody's gonna try and change the policy or the procedure, wouldn't they come in and say, hey, I don't want to put my motorhomes 10 feet apart. I'd like to put them 5 feet apart. Can you please change your rules? That should happen before they move the homes 5 feet apart. It should happen ahead of that, not the other way around. So I guess I'm just asking you to consider the fact that you already have a policy, you already have rules and regulations. If you're not going to enforce them, I'm wondering why you have them. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're not understanding.
Yeah.
There's a general discussion overall, and then I know I tried, and I think the chairman tried. We're not applying anything here. We are saying we have a system that it was trying to address the problem. And so everything you said, we probably don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
So you're talking here, we're talking here. I will say this is a little more complicated than it might seem to you from the current presentation, because there was an earlier presentation a couple, 3 months ago or something like that, where there were issues about really severe accusations about functions of the sheriff's department and tolerating thugs and bad behavior. And then I've been through this ringer before in other places where, in other circumstances where people are so upset that they'll say anything and everything like, do you really want us to go and inspect for mole holes and put posts up and don't put your lawn chair here, you might sink into the ground? I mean, you don't, so there is a weakness of arguments based on throwing everything, like, the kitchen sink at it. Rest assured, we definitely do pursue this kind of stuff. I have no desire to support this landowner or this landlord if all the allegations are just as they seem to be. Right. I'm not, right. And so, I guess I'm saying, I think your harangue was appropriate, but not really applicable.
Okay. I've never suggested that you should be inspecting the ground for mole holes and figuring out where people put their lawn chairs. I understand somebody got hurt doing that. I don't even know if you got a code for that. I really don't care.
We do care about a code though, and that's sort of what
But I do care
he's
about
saying is like,
the very fundamental thing that's being discussed here is if you have a code, it's not being enforced. If it's being inspected every November, then people are obviously turning a blind eye to it. My choice.
there's, this could go on for a long time. There's discretion all over the place. I see people doing something, driving traffic that drives me nuts. They will coast through a stop sign. I come to a full stop. I beg your pardon?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
I said it.
Okay.
I said it.
Thank you, members of Paradise Cove, for bringing this to our attention. What I really appreciate, and we don't want to overlook, that they're working on it. And they've explained that. Tracy has explained that they are on top of this and they're doing what they can. With this new information, I'm sure that it will accelerate the inspections and find out, get to the bottom of it. But what we need to look at is the whole big picture. Housing we're really suffering with housing. And if you were to talk to other landlords or tenants in Cowlitz County, you'd hear different complaints, but very similar and just as serious. And it is about displacing people. This is a unique situation where they've all sound like they're coming together as the tenants. And it is important to hear what they have to say. I'm happy that they brought this to light because this is so wrong. And we do have other property managers and landlords that live by these same low standards. Some of them don't want to displace their tenants, and some of them just don't give a darn. So we just have to look at the whole big picture. And as individuals, do what we can to help these people. Thank you.
I totally agree with that gentleman over there. I think he made some valid points. If we go by the statutes that guide these parks, enforce those rules. And yes, I'm not for government, but I'm for taking care of people, treating them right and following the rules. This person told me yesterday when I went in and paid my rent, he said, none of it's gonna work. That's what he said. And I said, whatever. And I walked out the door and Barb Reeves was with me. This person's history is his problem. And he's right there in front of the owners. And just like I said, the owners were charged $600,000 last year because they stole from their employees, and Department of Labor and Industries made them pay the money. They should have been prosecuted, but I'm sure there was a note signed for the money. If she looks in her statutes and the county looks in everything, and this park right now is on the cusp of mobile home / RV or both. And I think they're going to probably encounter that with other parks, even the one across the street. But I'm going to say again, The capacity of this park is overloaded already. The 9 sites that they added is gonna add way too many people, too many cars, and it's gonna endanger the lives of people in there. The other thing is the dumpsters are too close to any unit, everything. If you look at it's what they're not. Tell me one thing they're doing right. Everything is doing wrong. And the blind eye is totally correct. So that's where I'm coming from. I don't disagree with you, Rick, at all. I don't want people in my business. And yeah, could this displace me? Of course. I'll have to deal with that. But what's right is right. What's wrong is wrong, period.
Anything else?
Tracy, you'll be reporting back to us.
I'll follow up with you on Monday, if not before.
Thanks.
Any other items before we adjourn? Okay, remember this afternoon, we have juvenile courts in. Tomorrow we have Mr. Wood and we have sheriff and prosecuting attorney. So with that, we'll adjourn.
Thank you, man.